Oh, yay, hey, we're doing it again. Okay, so this time we're gonna do lecture number 2. Okay, so this one is about how to analyze and kind of map out arguments. Okay, which is something that you're gonna be asked to do. I'm gonna ask you to do this in the discussion post this week. Okay, so in the discussion board, you're asked to write an argument for yourself and then to map out and analyze an argument that somebody else writes. Okay, so this is what I'm hoping you'll do in the discussion board. Okay, it's also going to be largely what I'm going to ask you to do in quiz number 2. Okay, so this is going to be a kind of a walkthrough of how you do this. All right, so I'll show you using the good old PowerPoint. So just give me a second here, get this little guy going. There we go. Okay, so critical thinking number 2, argument identification and analysis practice. Okay, so here we go. So how to analyze arguments. Number 1, first thing you got to do is you got to identify statements. So remember, what's an argument? An argument is nothing more than a collection of statements, right? Some of which are premises for the conclusion, right? So the first thing you got to do is say, like, well, is this an argument, right? And, you know, how might we tell it's an argument? Well, how many statements have we got? Have we got more than one statement here? And what's a statement? Remember, a statement is a sentence that can be true or false, right? So let's take a look here. How many statements have we got? Well, we got Tom called Teresa a bad name. That's a statement, right? That could be true or false, right? Teresa punched Tom in the stomach. That's a statement. That could be true or false, right? And you've got this and here. Okay, so one thing that you should always remember is that when you see an and or a comma, right, that's usually an indication that you've got more than one statement. So you can split those up. Okay, so if you see an and, you can split it up, you got 2 statements, right, because you've got 2 things that could be true or false. Tom called Teresa a bad name. That could be true or it could be false. Teresa punched Tom in the stomach. That could be true or it could be false. Okay, so you can always split up and statements. Then you got this other one. Tom and Teresa are unhappy with each other. And guess what else you got? You've got some conclusion indicators. Therefore, we can conclude that. So what do you think? Do you think we got an argument here? It looks like we do, right? So, which one's the conclusion? What do you think? I mean, this one's real tough. I think you're pretty safe bet to say that number 3 is the conclusion, right? How do we know that? Well, it's got these indicators here, and it seems like that's the kind of thing that the person writing the argument is trying to convince you of, right? Tom and Teresa are unhappy with each other. How do you know? Well, I heard that Tom called Teresa a bad name, and I heard that Teresa punched Tom in the stomach. So Tom and Teresa are unhappy with each other, right? So, you know, you can kind of tell, like, that's the thing that whoever's writing this is trying to convince you, the reader, of. Right? So that's the conclusion. So this is how I want you to write it. First, you number each statement, right? Split up your ands, right? You list your indicators. In this case, we only have conclusion indicators. There's no premise indicators. Then once you've identified the conclusion, you write conclusion, and you say from 1 and 2. In other words, 1 and 2 provide support for 3. In other words, 1 and 2 give you reason to believe 3. Okay, does that make sense? So this is what I'm asking you to do when I'm asking you to analyze an argument. Analyze literally means to take apart. Okay, so that's what I'm asking you to do here. Take apart the argument and then tell me which one's the conclusion. Tell me which ones are premises for that conclusion and list your indicators. Okay, make sense? Great. Next one. So this is just some more practice, right? Remember, always break up your conjunctions. Right? A conjunction is an and or a comma, right? So let's take a look. Operas can make you cry. Operas can make you laugh, and they can make you cheer. It seems, therefore, that operas evoke a range of emotions. So how many statements have we got here? Well, operas can make you cry. That's one. Then we've got this other sentence, and check it out. We got an and. So we got operas can make you laugh, and they can make you cheer, right? So notice the and there, right? That indicates that we've got more than one statement. So you can break that up, okay? And then finally, you've got, it seems therefore that operas can evoke a range of emotions. So we've got 4 statements. That's the first thing you do. How many statements have you got? Then, are there any conclusion indicators? Well, yes, it is right there. Ah, very good, right? So which one do you think is the conclusion? Oh, number 4, right? So, 2, conclusion, 4 from 1, 2, and 3, right? Operas can evoke a range of emotions. How do you know that? Well, they can make you cry, they can make you laugh, they can make you cheer. Those are 3 emotions, which would suggest to us that they evoke a range of emotions, yeah? So, yeah, each one of those provides support for 4. Make sense? Okay? These are very simple ones, obviously. It's going to get trickier. Want to try a trickier one? Here we go. Okay, so things can get strange sometimes, right? Not all arguments are that straightforward where you've just got premise, 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 conclusion or something, right? Sometimes you've got what are called intermediate conclusions, okay? Or premises in an argument for an overall conclusion, which themselves have premises that support them, okay? So I'll give you an example. Look at that. Since plastics do not decompose, plastic products pose a threat to the environment. Drinking straws are made of plastic, so straws pose a threat to the environment, right? How many statements have we got? I count 4. Let's see. Plastics do not decompose. That's 1. Zoop. Oh, let's get the little laser pointer. That thing's more fun, isn't it? Yeah. Right? So plastics do not decompose. And then notice there's a little comma there. So plastic products pose a threat to the environment, right? And we got 3. Drinking straws are made of plastic. And then a comma. And so straws pose a threat to the environment, right? So we got 4 statements, 4 things that could be true or false, right? Now, what have we got for indicators? We got any premise indicators? Since, okay. Any conclusion indicators? So, where's so? So, okay, maybe we should circle those. What do you guys think? I think circling is a great idea, right? So we've got since, that's our premise indicator, and then we've got so, that's a conclusion indicator, right? So, what do we think then? So this is going to be a conclusion. Is it the main conclusion? And this is going to be a premise, okay? So the tricky part now is figuring out how everything else works. We know that this is definitely a premise, right? Plastics do not decompose. What is it a premise for? This is a conclusion, right? Plastic straws pose a threat to the environment. Does plastics do not decompose provide you with support for straws posing a threat to environment directly? No. Okay, so plastics do not decompose is giving us support for this second one, right? That plastic products pose a threat to the environment, right? How do we know that plastic products pose a threat to the environment? Well, because they don't decompose, right? So we've got this premise indicator here, right, that tells us this is a premise, and it's immediately followed by this, which suggests to us that, you know, this is what it's supplying support for, right? So what we've got here is what we're calling an intermediate conclusion. In other words, this thing is the conclusion of a little sub-argument, right? So we've got a little mini argument here with 1 and 2, where 1 is providing support for 2, okay? So IC here, that stands for intermediate conclusion, okay? So 2 is an intermediate conclusion from 1. 1 gives you reason to believe 2. And then 4, right, we know is a conclusion because it's got so, right? We've got drinking straws are made of plastic, so straws pose a threat to the environment. So notice 3 is giving us support for 4, but does it do it by itself? If we only know that drinking straws are made of plastic, does that tell us that they're a threat to the environment? No, it's only if we take it with 2, right? So only if we have 2 and 3 together do we get strong support for 4, right? It's only because plastic is a threat to the environment and drinking straws are made of plastic that we know that straws pose a threat to the environment. If straws were made of paper, which many are nowadays, right, would they pose a threat to the environment? No, right? And if plastic was not a threat to the environment, would drinking straws made of plastic pose a threat to the environment? No, right? So if you just have one of these things, it doesn't give you support, but if you take them together, it does. So you get a conclusion from 2 and 3, right? So 2 and 3 together provide support for 4, and 1 provides support for 2. Make sense? Hope so. Okay. Don't worry. If you're having confusion, like if you're confused by this stuff at all, like you can walk through the textbook. There's really good information in there on the textbook. They're going to tell you how to map it a little bit differently, but they'll start by talking about this. Okay. So notice this is all I want you to be able to do is tell me which ones are the intermediate conclusions and which ones are the conclusions, and then which premises support which conclusions. Okay. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Don't worry, we'll do one more, okay? We'll do one more and we'll get a little bit stranger, okay? So this one's tricky. I'm gonna give you one more new rule here, okay? The new rule is you can split up an and, but never split up an or, okay? So here it is. This is the stereotypical, I'm from Canada and I grew up with a lot of women named Mary and Jennifer. So that's actually my sister's name is Jennifer Mary. But anyway, so this is my like typical white boy from Canada example. All right, so I hope you'll sort of humor me in talking about ice skating for a second and little girls named Jennifer and Mary. All right, so Mary and Jennifer are the only two top-notch female skaters. So either Mary or Jennifer will win the skating championship. But Mary has been ill for the past week, so she will lose. Therefore, Jennifer will win. Ah? Ah? Okay, so let's list the whatever you call it, the statements here. All right. So 1, Mary and Jennifer are the only top-notch skaters. Now, look, you can do this a couple ways. I just kept that and together because it seemed easier. But you could split it up. If you were going to split it up, you would say Mary is a top-notch skater and Jennifer is a top-notch skater. And you'd probably have to have somewhere in there that there are no other top-notch skaters, because that's what only suggests, okay? Great. So then we've got 2, either Mary or Jennifer will win the skating championship. Don't split up an or statement, okay? This is very important. Either Mary or Jennifer will win the skating championship, okay? It's gonna have to be one or the other. So the or is really central there to the truth value of this statement, right? Whereas you can split up an and, you can't split up an or, okay? You've only got one truth statement if it's an or. 3, Mary has been ill for the past week. 4, Mary will not win the skating championship. 5, Jennifer will win the skating championship, okay? So do we have any premise indicators? Well, let's see, what do we got? Let's see. Mary and Jennifer are the only champions skating, I don't know. So, yeah, that's not a premise indicator. But Mary has been ill over the past week. So, no, I don't see any. You see any? I do not see any. Okay, how about conclusion indicators? Let's see. Mary and Jennifer are the only female skaters. So, there's one. Mary has been ill for the past week. So, right? Therefore, okay, so it looks like we're going to have a bunch of intermediate conclusions, right? Because we've got more than one conclusion indicator. So what do we think they're going to be, right? Well, this is going to have to be an intermediate one, right? Because it's immediately followed or preceded by a, conclusion indicator. And then this is going to have to be one, right? So we've got, let's see. This is going to be an intermediate conclusion, right? 2, and then Mary will not win. Is that one? Yeah, that's one, right? It could also say Mary will lose. That's how it's written here. However you want to do it is fine, as long as the truth content is the same, right? So those are our 2 intermediate conclusions, and then we've got this one, right? Jennifer will win. That's the conclusion. How do we know that that's the conclusion? Well, it seems like that's the point. Like, right? Why would somebody be telling you all this unless they were trying to tell you who is ultimately going to win, right? They're probably not trying to argue that either Mary or Jennifer will win the skating championship. Like, it doesn't seem like this has anything to do with that, right? It seems like the real point here is that Jennifer is going to win, right? So we know Jennifer is going to win is the conclusion, right? We know that these two and 4 are intermediate conclusions. And look at this. If you take them together, either Jennifer or Mary will win the skating championship, right? And we know that Mary will not. Hey, guess what? What does that tell you? Well, definitely Jennifer will, right? Like all you have to do is think about it like this. Like just look at this one. Either Mary or Jennifer will win the skating championship, right? All you have to do is delete one of them. No Mary, right? Therefore, you get rid of the or, and you got Jennifer will win the skating championship, right? And that is what this does. It eliminates one side, right? It basically just crosses this out. So then we know this must be true, right? Which is here. Does that make sense? That's what you call a disjunctive syllogism, right? Which is a fancy way of saying you've got an or statement. You've got either this is going to happen or this is going to happen. And then you say, this is not going to happen. And then you can say, hey, guess what? That's going to happen. Okay, does that make sense? I hope so. Please get to me if you have confusion about this. Look it up in the textbook if you have confusion about this. It's called a disjunctive syllogism. That's what's going on here. But anyway, the point is 2 and 4 give you very strong reason to believe 5, right? So that's the main conclusion. And then notice we've got these things here, right? So 1, Mary and Jennifer are the only 2 top-notch female skaters. What is that doing in there? Well, that's giving you reason to believe that one of them is going to win, right? So guess what? That's an intermediate conclusion, and it's supported by 1. And then Mary will not win the skating championship. How do we know that? Well, she's been sick, right? So that's intermediate conclusion 3 there, and it's supported by premise 3. Make sense? Ta-da! I really hope this does. It's kind of hard to do. So let me know if this is working for you. If it's not, I can, we can talk about this. So get in touch with me if you're having trouble. If you don't understand how to do this stuff, that's fine. My guess is by the time you work your way through quiz 2 and you work your way through the discussion board, it'll make a lot more sense, right? It's hard when you don't get to do it yourself. But think of quiz 2 as just kind of practice, okay? I'm going to give you as many attempts as you want. So just give it a shot and practice and try to figure it out. Make sure you're clear on it. And if you have any questions, just ask me. All right, so I hope this has been helpful. Don't hesitate to get in touch if you have questions. All right. Yeah, that's the long and the short of it. So I'll see you again sometime. See you around.